set goals that you know you can do and hit them, and then you'll often find you can do more, which is really great for morale.
Cam Wurf is perhaps the most versatile elite endurance athlete in the world.
Anything you want to do, if you want to do it well, you got to commit to it for a long period of time and continue to get better and better and better.
Truly a one of one, a guy who transitioned to professional cycling after a career as an Olympic rower, and now serves up domestique duties for the INEOS Grenadier squad, while simultaneously racking up wins and podiums on the Ironman circuit as one of triathlon's all-time greats.
You know, when we're in the race, it's like you got to do what you got to do to get to where you need to be to give yourself a chance to try and win this thing.
This week, Cam returns to Kona to once again contend for the Ironman World Championship title. So I thought it would be super fun to have him back on the show to share his predictions on how this legendary race just might unfold, how he maintains world-class fitness at 40, as well as his enthusiasm for training and racing as a lifelong full-time professional athlete, while also balancing his life as a husband and a father.
I've been doing this for a lot of years, and I've enjoyed doing long days of training since I was, 15, 16 years old. It's one thing for people to copy what I do on a daily basis, but they don't understand what was done in the past.
Cam is just absolutely indefatigable. His enthusiasm for life training racing is infectious. And this one, whether you're simply someone who's fitness curious or you're a seasoned hardcore athlete, has invaluable takeaways for everybody.
We're really at the cutting edge of a sport where we're just pushing the envelope. So it's quite difficult to sort of look at a blueprint and go, that's going to work. I mean, that might put you at a certain level, but if you want to win, you've got to really...
All right, we're rocking. So this is the most last-minute spontaneous podcast I've ever done. I just kind of hit you up. What are you doing right now? And you came over because you're training in the neighborhood in between workouts in your lead up to Kona, man. So thanks for carving out a little bit of time.
Yeah, you got me on a good day. Not to give too much away to my opposition, but it's one of the few days of the week I only train twice.
Yeah. Oh, really? Usually it's 3. Yeah. It's all day, every day. Yeah. 4 workouts in a day. But you got to start toning it down a little bit. We're like 2 weeks out?
Yeah, 2.5 weeks now. So, I mean,
Do you have a different kind of taper than the normal endurance athlete?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I prefer to feel like I need to keep the engine running. I feel like I'm not good at sort of resting, and I feel like I'm not doing enough. So it's more of a
you're not doing enough, Cam.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the problem.
Yeah, so no, I struggle. But I mean, Nike, a big thing with the running, and that the running generally is still the cornerstone of the program, to be honest. And they've found with their experience with the running group that 2 to 3 week out block is where you get a lot of bang for your buck. And that's not saying, okay, you got to do your biggest volume, but I think hitting your quality sessions, is really key in that time. So I actually look forward to this period because, it is like 2 weeks out, 2 to 3 weeks. You're getting tired. You just want to rest and to rest up for the race. But, you're also excited to do those sessions that tell you where you're at. Well, ideally, you're excited to do those sessions and tell you where you're at because you're hoping they're going to tell you where you're in a good place. So,
but as soon as you start to dial back a little bit, it's sort of worse before it gets better, right? You go through this fallow period where you feel like shit because your body's used to hitting it so hard. And it's a period of time in which you can't increase your aerobic capacity, but you can sharpen the tool and get a little bit faster, and you kind of work on those details and your speed. Yeah,
I also find just the little things you start losing time for as you get tired in a training cycle. Your mobility, your yoga, your stretching, reading a bit more, just making sure things are organized. I really start to nail those things, and then mentally I start to feel more prepared for the race by knowing that I'm doing those things properly as well, when they've sort of probably gone to the wayside when you're just grinding out the hours and hours in training. So, but I mean, that 2 to 3 week period is definitely an exciting time. And then, it's funny you say that because it's so true. I mean, yesterday I went through that moment. I usually do basically a 6-day week. I train sort of 6 days straight, and every day has some sort of purpose. So by the time I get to Sunday, you know, I'm a bit tired.
Yeah.
And Monday is your day off, and I really enjoy that day off. But then Tuesday, you sort of think you're going to feel amazing and fresh, but it's generally when I actually feel the worst. And then it's not till today
the body's
or tomorrow.
not used to being turned off.
That's
like,
right.
What are you doing?
It's like more like today and tomorrow where I start to feel that rest day really kicked in, you know, and you have a nice period in the middle of the week, and then it's all of a sudden you're hanging on again at the end of the week. So I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. I love going through all that.
What is your message to the average or the aspiring runner, endurance athlete, triathlete who, you know, flips open Instagram and sees lots of videos about, you know, people talking about like everything you ever heard is wrong, and here's the workout you need to do, or here's the product that you'll never be able to be competitive without. Like, you've been around so long, you've seen trends come and go.
Yeah.
Obviously, you know, you're receptive to new good ideas and technologies that can help improve your performance, but where do you think people get confused or can kind of go awry in terms of like paying attention to that versus what you've learned and kind of earned over time to know that what works?
Yeah, the biggest thing is consistency if you want to get to anything. I mean, people often start running and it hurts, and so they stop. You know, that can take months. It can take even a year to be able to get on top of things like that. I mean, I think just understanding that it takes time. I mean, like anything you want to do, if you want to do it well, you got to commit to it for a long period of time. And over a long period of time, you'll just continue to get better and better and better. I mean, with people with busy lives, they work and they do everything. I think it's important. And I had to do this myself this year with the cycling team, because the last couple of years I get frustrated. I'd get called into a race. Not that I'm annoyed about that, but I'm annoyed, I'm not swimming now, I'm not running as what I want. And I'd feel like I'm going backwards. Whereas in reality, I needed to realize, wow, I'm doing some of the biggest bike races on the planet. Commit to them and get as fit as you can, and then you can take that back into your training, which is something I feel like I've done very well this year. And the key change I made was a few non-negotiables that are very attainable each week, like a few sessions, you know, that I know will ensure at worst I stay where I'm at, but still will potentially keep me getting better. And inadvertently, you end up actually being able to do more than that. So then you feel great about yourself. I think people often set expectations, whether it be diet extreme and training extreme or getting up at 3 a.m. or whatever. And when then you don't do it, and you feel like you're letting yourself down. I mean, set goals that you know you can do and hit them. And then if you're hitting them and you're hitting them comfortably, then you start to look and go, you know, I'm feeling good. I'm feeling like I'm getting fitter. I feel like I can do that and bounce back and train hard this week, you know. But it's really been a big change for me, you know, setting out these more with during the cycling period, you know, okay, you want to get these 3 swims in a week, you want to get these 2 runs, you know, it was basically I want to get a longer run in each week and 1 fast work, you know. And then if you can run after that, they can just be easy little whatever runs around the block just to keep everything moving, you know, a couple of gym sessions because that keeps everything. And then obviously when you're home, you can get back into your normal routine. You're never going to go backwards from that. And the same with swimming. And I think for people, especially with their busy lives, you know, you just set, because I hear it a lot at swimming at Tower 26, a lot of guys, oh, I'm burnt out, I'm this. I'm thinking, well, I'm not surprised. Like, I find it hard to get up at 5:45 and come to the pool. You guys do this, go to work, have 3 kids, whatever else. I mean, that must be really exhausting, you know? So yeah, as I said, just set attainable goals and then you'll often find you can do more, which is really great
and
for morale.
extend your timeline.
Yeah.
Maybe, right? Like everyone they're thinking, I want to do this thing in 6 months or whatever. But if you start thinking in terms of years. I mean, big picture to me, and tell me what you think. To your point, like consistency is the most important thing. So create something that you can replicate every single day that's not going to disrupt the rest of your life. Yeah. And then any increase in volume or intensity beyond that, pick those moments wisely. Yeah. And you need that. You need those intense sessions. You need to increase your volume, but not to the point where it begins to threaten your ability to be consistent, right? Yeah. So you have to do that like very gradually over time. Yeah. And learn about what you can handle and what you can't handle, not just physically, but in the context of all the other things that you're doing in your life.
Your health's your wealth. I mean, if you're sick and you're injured and whatever, you can't do anything. And so
Have you ever been overtrained?
Not to my knowledge. I'm probably constantly overtrained. I'm probably chronically overtrained.
No, you have way too much energy.
But
like you're in the middle of your training day. You pop in here. You're like, you're just lit. The last time you did this, you came in. It was like nighttime. Like it was like 7 at night or something like that. And you threw down like 4 espressos. And I felt like you could have talked for 4 hours. I think I texted you. I was like, did you sleep last night after that?
Yeah. No, I don't think so. Kipchoge's a great one to follow with that. I mean, it's always leave a little bit for tomorrow. Don't. What do they say? Train to race. Don't race to train. So and to do that, you need to make sure you have that month. Days and days and weeks and months and months and years and years.
Like a weekend hero, race day 0?
Precisely. Yeah. So I think that's. But
when you do these group rides, though, everyone's like, they've got it out for you. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. They want to measure themselves.
More so when I was, cycling. But I think now because they know I've probably come from swimming or something, it's a bit more, people are a bit more respectful actually. Yeah, they actually kind of admire that you can go and do that or you operate at that level kind of in every discipline. But that's just, as I said, our sport is incredibly professional now and we're pushing limit. 8 hours used to be great. Now, if you can't go 7:40 on an average day, you're not in it. And if you can't go 7:30 on a really good day, well, you're not going to win the biggest races. And that's happening consistently. And I'm really proud that I'm still able to be a part of the conversation. I'm sure none of the guys, a lot of people would expect me to win, but I know they can't count me out either. So that's good.
One of the things that feels different, I don't know if it's this year specifically, but over like the last couple of years, but really, I think more so this year than any other year, and we were chatting about this a couple of minutes ago, is the transparency with which a lot of the elite athletes are sharing kind of what they're doing.
Yeah.
So we've got Lionel Sanders, who's doing his, famous vlog. I watched a couple of those episodes this morning, not even knowing that you were coming in today.
Yeah.
And he talks a lot about like you literally get to see everything he does and he shows his Whoop scores and what he's eating and all that kind of stuff. And he also talks about his evolution with his relationship with his own training, like going through periods where he was too influenced by what other people were doing and learning how to like figure out what works for him. And, over like kind of looming over everybody's head is like what the Norwegians are doing. Right. And there's this temptation like, oh, they're doing all this next level stuff. Like I need to do that or I need to do this. And maybe some of those things work, maybe some of them don't, but at some point you have to like figure out what works for you. And I see you as somebody who is a little old school in that regard. Like you've been doing this for a long time. Yeah. There are certain things we know work, and you can, to the point of sharpening your tool, there are other things out there that are kind of, coming up in terms of science and technology where you perhaps can get a little bit of a percent or two edge, but fundamentally, like the work is the work.
Yeah, I always like to use the Nike, the carbon shoe evolution, and when that came out, it was basically designed to allow us to run more often at a higher level, which would make you fitter, and stronger. It wasn't just like a magic pill you took and all of a sudden you ran faster. And so I've been doing this for a lot of years and I've enjoyed doing long days of training since I was 15, 16 years old.
And you're 40
I'm 41
now.
41, yeah. So, 25 years I've been putting that stuff in the body. So it's one thing for people to copy what I do on a daily basis, but they don't understand what was done in the past. And I think also what, I kind of sense you might have asked a question like this on the drive out, and I was thinking about the sport and I think we're really at a cutting, and a lot of it has been down in Norwegians, but I think a lot of us have had an input in this of the sport going to a new level, even from my perspective with the bike, that did change when I came in, and obviously then the guys...
You could take it for granted for a long time that you were going to dominate on the bike, and that's no longer...
That's no longer the thing, but what we saw was I kind of dominated, and then guys learn how to ride as quick but still run as fast, so stay well ahead of me, and then that's just kept going. And that's sort of the swimming, as it's very hard for that to move much. They're already at a very high level because most guys come from a very high swimming background, and triathlon swimming, they end up actually swimming less than before. So the chances of that improving is is minimal, whereas the bike and the run. So as far as the training goes, we're really at the cutting edge of a sport where we're just pushing the boundaries. So the reality is there's no real science, there's no real blueprint. No one really knows, there was probably an era previously, where your Craig Alexanders and, your Norman Stadlers and Chris McCormick's were winning Kona, where there was like a bit of a pattern to it and it was who got it right. We're finding now that like everyone's really pushing the envelope. So it's quite difficult to sort of look at a blueprint and go, that's going to work. I mean, that might put you at a certain level, but if you want to win, you've got to really try something different.
Yeah.
And so I think that's on the individual to be able to, and that's what I love about Lionel and the way he's approaching it now, listening to himself and understanding, because some days you got to work harder. Other days you got to be like, no, I need to take it easier. And I know from a personal perspective, I feel like I've been much smarter this year of, when I don't need to train hard, I'm not training hard. But when I do need to go, I really go. Mm-hmm. And that is probably been my biggest change more recently. But, I'm able to do that, like you say, because, almost 25 years of base that I can rely on, that I don't need to sort of be topping up on that part anymore. I can be tuning the engine a bit more.
Yeah. So when you say that's the biggest change, meaning you're doing more like threshold speed work than you have in the past?
I definitely am doing more speed work, more harder work, and then also much more easier work. I very rarely actually operate at the intensities that we race an Ironman at. You're either way above it or below it. Obviously, there's a time and a place to teach the body and remind the body how to do that. But I've found that, especially as I got older, it's very easy to get used to just grinding out the days. You can get very good at just grinding, go at a decent pace for a long time. But at the end of the day, it doesn't maybe make you as sharp as what other guys are, right, that are coming into the sport, from a more Olympic distance background or a speed background. So you need to evolve. And and it's been really fun. All this talk of VO2 and longevity, exactly. I'm 41. I do want to live a long time. So absolutely, I want to keep my VO2. I had a great discussion about that with a guy last night, a friend of mine who's big in the altitude space. And we were talking about, what I'm trying to do is just keep it at the optimal level.
Yeah. What is your VO2 max?
So I'm still around 6 liters, a bit over 6 liters. I actually did 4 tests in 2 days at Nike earlier in the year, back in February. And it hasn't changed since I was, first tested when I was 18 to 20. Right. It's bubbled along through different sports, ups and downs and whatever, but the baseline, the overall size. So then that equates to, high 70s if I'm a bit fat in the off season to, high 80s, maybe low 90s when I'm, trimmed up and ready to go. It's not the hundreds like Christian, but it's pretty high and it's stayed that way for 25 years.
Right. An athlete at your level, like your VO2 max is pretty static, right? It's not something you need to like check that often. Like it kind of is where it's at. There's a lot of discussion now about VO2 max in the context of longevity, but in elite performance, I think there might be some confusion about the frequency with which like someone like yourself needs to test for that. And that came out in that podcast between Peter Attia and Tade. Did you listen to that?
Yes.
Where it felt like Peter was a little surprised that Tade doesn't really pay attention to that or think about that. But it wasn't surprising to me. Like he all he needs to do is test it like once every couple of years or whatever. It's like, that's not moving that much. Yeah. It's more about like heart rate and power and then, on top of that, like HRV and things like that for recovery.
Yeah.
But the other kind of shockwave that came out of that was the revelation that his like zone 2 pace is 340 watts.
Yeah.
But guys like you have to be like around 300, right? It's not like you're not like that much below something like that.
Well, no, we're not. We're probably I'm a bit bigger than him, so I can probably do more.
So what is your like normalized power in your zone 2?
To be honest, I don't do sessions like him, but if you look at an Ironman, some of my best bike splits, where I've ridden quite well or been in shape, have been 320, 330 watts, and you're doing that on a time trial bike, so you could probably add, a certain number of watts, but then you're also running a 2
Right.
something marathon, 250, 240s marathon. So if you look at, and in theory, we're basically zone 2. I mean, my average heart rate in an Ironman is around 150 to 160. So a bit above, of course. There's a bit of a racy element, but you're sort of sitting between that 140, 160 zone, the whole day. So in theory, so that was very impressive to hear his numbers, but also not really surprising. I think what's more impressive about Tadej's numbers, which is what people would not really understand when they say it, but he can do 500 watts for 20 minutes or something crazy like that. I mean, that zone, I mean, honestly, there's a lot of people that can do that kind of power for that long. Maybe his repeatability at it might be at a higher level than most, but I would imagine that particularly in our sport, because it's very focused on that type of effort, I would imagine there's a lot of triathletes that are, very similar to that, but where he separates himself,
those accelerations,
as
and
potentially,
then his ability to quickly recover from those accelerations and get down into that zone 2 and feel comfortable
and do it again. That's what for me really is setting him. I mean, I think we looked at Kipchoge, I mean, as the greatest endurance athlete for a very, very long time and still is. I mean, obviously he's had a difficult few marathons. I know he's determined to fight back and try and win again next year. And a guy like that, if they're going to line up, you never count them out. But you'd have to say that at the moment, Tadej Pogačar is probably the greatest endurance athlete, showing the most amazing endurance sort of performances, in that kind of space when you talk about a high performance athlete.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess, you got Ingebrigtsen and these other guys, but I think Pogačar and his dominance is, and the way he's doing
quite
it is
a year for that guy.
Unreal.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just so great for the sport. He is just a great ambassador for the sport. I listened to that podcast when I was doing the run I talked to you about the other day. I was I listened to Ryan Holiday actually jogging up to Nike Missile Site, and then I put on the Pogačar podcast, Peter Attias, to go down West Ridge. But I just love the way he talked about Jonas Vingegaard and it just shows the guy's intellect that, yes, he felt like Jonas he obviously had his crash and had his injury, but he was probably able to get back on the bike and train properly very quickly. Yet he acknowledged that the fact that he'd missed that time meant he was limited in his ability to back those efforts up, where Tadej had the perfect preparation, winning a Giro and training and whatever else, which gave him the ability to race at that level over 3 weeks. But
Jonas was seeing like his best numbers despite the crash and all of that.
Exactly.
But his ability to respond to those surges, he just couldn't match it.
And do it again and again and again. And that's also, Tadej staying on edge, knowing I've got to probably still get better because Jonas next year will be better, So, he's just a class act all around, that guy. It's really fantastic for the sport.
Just beginning,
Yeah.
It's like a whole new era.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you have this discussion all the time, and it's all this about, who's going to beat him or who's going to beat these guys in the Tour. And it's, of my opinion, it's probably a guy most likely that we haven't heard of. We might get some guys that decide to focus more on the Tour, say like a Tom Peacock, or obviously Remco's already there. There's a bunch of highly talented riders in the peloton that could potentially start challenging or being a part of the conversation. But as far as anyone that can maybe do what he's doing in the future, probably be maybe no one. I mean, it's taken a long time since he's arrived, but it's likely someone that we've never heard of because he is so good at the moment.
As somebody who mixes it up in the peloton with these guys, Remco, Jonas, Tadej, what do you see or know about who they are, because you know them personally, that like maybe people like ourselves who just read about it and watch them on television like don't understand about what distinguishes them and makes them so much better? And Pidcock also.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's a bunch of them,
especially after the Olympics and his mountain bike win, which was incredible.
Yeah, I mean, quickly, I took my son to that.
Yeah, I know you were there.
Yeah, I missed you were there.
I was in Paris. I was at the Red Bull House watching it live, but I couldn't get over to see it.
It was unreal. I mean, the craziest thing was I'm running around with Wide. He's 4. He doesn't really like the crowds. So we had good tickets so we could sort of move around where we wanted. And there was this drop off, and with the Olympic rings on, I thought, how cool to get a photo. So he's on there, I'm getting the photo. He comes along, and I snap the photos, and I quickly kind of look through them, and I see there's Tom off his bike midair jumping off this thing. So he'd had the flat tire.
Yeah.
Until that point, it was sort of seemed like a foregone conclusion, the race. Like he got to the front, he was about to drop them, and that was it. And he's jumps off the bike last second. Like the frame, he was probably half a foot from the edge, and he's still on the bike, and somehow he gets off and jumps.
Yeah.
Because he knew that if he landed on that rim, it was probably going to explode it, and it could have been really bad. So he obviously changed it, and then the whole race dynamic just changed. But just to see what his determination to fight back and
claws back, then gets passed again, and then
that was the crazy thing. He did that attack on that last lap that looked like it was done, and Koretsky responded and got back in front of him, and Koretsky hits a tree, and Tom gets past, but then he passes him again. He looked just so much better than Tom, and then Tom finds a way to brush past, and to be there. And my son, Tom's girlfriend, Bethany, has babysat him when he was young, up until he was 2 or 3 years old, and so he spent a lot of time with her and Tom, and he just to have that experience as that kid, he knows Tom so well, and still does see him a lot, and to witness that.
What is happening?
Yeah,
you're
exactly.
Wait, this is my babysitter? I don't understand what's going on.
That's his Olympic experience, to know the
all
guy
my friends win gold medals.
Pretty much. Well, a couple of days later, we went to watch the triathlon, and obviously Hayden Wild is a guy in Andorra that I train with all the time, and his girlfriend Hannah spends a lot of time with us at the house. She stayed with us in Tassie. She came down for the half Ironman there earlier in the year. So Wyatt again has spent a lot of time with them, and we went and watched that. And Hayden, it looked like he'd won that. Alex Yee passed him on the blue carpet, and his perception of the Olympics. So since then, it's just been, Dad, I want you to go to the Olympics. I'm going to go to the Olympics. Tom and Hayden are his heroes.
What's the matter with you, Dad?
Yeah, exactly. Why weren't you there? And I said, okay, mate. Well, maybe we'll stick at it.
I did it long time ago.
Yeah, we'll try and get to LA.
But last time we were here, and I know you've talked about it since, you still have your eye on somehow getting into LA 28.
Yeah, and there's a bit of an exciting development there. I mean, the rowing was one thing I thought about, but seeing the way the Olympic triathlon panned out, with Hayden and Alex, they both actually basically had a helper. They had someone there to help them. They had a guy that would swim basically pretty close to them and then put them in the position for the run. And I think that type of event, particularly the Olympics, that's dynamic is going that way, because there's very few guys that can win, that are capable of it. And we've actually got a very exciting young prospect from Tasmania that I was, when I was home over the summer, Australian summer. Jack Woodbury's his name. He's 16. Probably one of the best track runners we've seen at that age. He's he's actually doing the Junior Worlds next week. He's at 16. So in theory, he's got 3 years as a junior. He is phenomenal. And LA potentially looms as being quite a big favorite. I mean, if I could paint a script of a dream scenario, to make the Olympic team and be able to help him. I mean, no idea if I'd be good enough. It would require a huge sort of shift in preparation and all of that. But it would be definitely something that would motivate me to try, to be there to support him. I mean, he'd only be 19. I'd be 45, 44. So,
it's a great story though.
Especially being Tasmanian. So that's definitely something that is now, got some fuel to the fire and makes me swim a little harder and run a bit quicker. The things I'd need to do to try to make that happen.
Over the last decade of hosting this podcast, my mission has been to engage in what I consider to be critically important conversations about the things that matter most in life. While I'm immensely grateful for the growth of this show, I've also come to realize that my voice alone is not enough. This mission cannot be a solitary endeavor. So I wanted to find a way to help amplify other meaningful voices. And the result is Voicing Change Media, this beautiful consortium of thinkers, storytellers, artists, and visionaries, all committed to fostering meaningful exchanges, intentionally curated for those committed to the path of self-discovery. Together, we're creating a space of growth, a space of understanding, where every exchange has the potential to enrich our lives and catalyze profound personal and planetary change. Visit voicingchange.media to learn more and subscribe.
So back to the original question, which is what makes those guys different from your point of view of being somebody who is like in the mix with them?
Yeah, so it seems that the biggest difference, the raw numbers, they're pretty phenomenal, like the actual power they can do, but the way they can deliver it so much more often than in the past. The way they can stay at that super high level for a long, every day is hard. Back in the old days, the races used to be, a couple of days hard, then maybe an easier day, and everyone was pretty happy to do that. Whereas now, these guys are happy to race hard every single day, and honestly, the overall power numbers are not crazily different on the big days, but it's just you might have 7 straight instead of 2 or 3 straight. So their fatigue resistance, for example, is quite phenomenal. And I think that just comes from, a very young age of just growing up in an era where that started to come into the sport and they're just conditioned for that. And you've got the older guard that were used to the old way and have to try to adapt. So they're kind of struggling a bit to bridge the gap.
We saw that with Tade because he would make these aggressive moves like unnecessarily, like early in the race. Like why are you throwing down here? Like you have to think about how you're going to feel in 2 weeks or whatever. And that was confusing for a lot of people and considered like brash or irresponsible, but he would consistently back it up.
Absolutely.
Right. And so it's like, all right, well, this is a new thing. Like we're not used to seeing people being unnecessarily aggressive. We're used to seeing people really, conserve their energy and kind of cautiously approach the race if like the yellow jersey is the goal. Yeah,
absolutely. And I mean, knowledge of training and performance and how fast people can go. I mean, these guys have all again grown up in that era where they know that. They know what Chris Froome was doing. They know what these guys were doing. They could go out and practice it and practice it and practice it, and then figure out how to be better and better and sort of really raise the level of the sport. One just thing about them all is they're all incredibly polite and lovely guys to speak to in the bunch as well. They're very likable. That's
different too. Like Lance has talked about how confusing that is for him.
Yeah.
Like these guys are hugging each other and they're buddies and he's like, what is happening?
There is a lot of that. And the fact is though, that helps you in the peloton because people are kind of give you some space. They kind of wait to see what you're going to do. They have respect for these guys and kind of almost allow them to race the way they want to race, which is a smart tactic on their behalf.
Political advantage.
Exactly, as opposed to being a bit of a, boss and an a-hole and whatever else and and then you've got the whole group racing against you. Yeah. These guys, they're just, it's the same with Van der Poel, Wout van Aert. They're just really gentlemanly racers that are very, very good. And I guess the sport, to a large extent, allows them to put on their show.
Yeah.
But I think to your point, a big thing's been they've had the knowledge of, like, more so than in the past, say in the Lance era where you could read about what he did, a time up a certain climb or something, but really you couldn't quantify it. Power meters were rare. Heart rate monitors were something, I guess. But, we didn't really have a lot of information. Whereas now these guys just have so much data. They can reverse engineer anything on Strava. They can do all this stuff. And they've just had – and then COVID, I guess, helped because they had that time to really just train. And we've obviously had a period before Kona of endurance sport, I think, in general, and a post-Kona period where the whole endurance world has just gone to another level.
Yeah.
Where people just had time to put that work in and try to match what the best people can do. But as I said, there's a limit to the physical ability of any human, but the ability to do it more often seems to be what is being exploited now.
Yeah. Tough year for INEOS.
Yeah.
Rebuilding year. Like what's it like on the team bus? Like what's happening? What is the vision for the year to come?
Yeah, it's a tough one. And it's same last couple of years. It hasn't gone great. There hasn't been as many wins. And yet still, if you look at some of the success the team's had, I mean, there's some great successes there. But when you're not winning the Tour de France,
and you have this legacy of dominance also like looming over you.
It's seen as a big, giant failure, you know. So it's tough. I mean, the guys are getting bashed around. I think what I feel sorry for a lot of our guys is that, you know, we had some young guys that were very, very good a couple of years ago and doing, you know, exceptionally well, winning races, you know, out of the blocks. And now a lot of guys that are older than them, you know, have sort of gone past them. And I think that's quite tough for them because normally, you know, if you're young and you're great, you just expect to continue on this curve. So I think as a team, we need to really look at what we're doing from a performance side to support the athletes to get, you know, the most out of them because, you know.
What does that look like specifically?
I think it's a problem because you've had so much success, you just sort of figure you just keep doing it and it'll work. And there's been a shift, I think, in a lot of other teams around, I guess, it must be preparation because once you get to the race, it's too late. You know, it's how you turn up to the race, how well prepared you are. Also, a bit more of a blank canvas. You know, a lot of teams have had a lot more investment put in. It's like, okay, we weren't competitive with our team. You know, how do we change everything and sort of modernize? And I guess they've been able to evolve with the current format of the sport quicker than we've been able to because obviously we still have a bit of a lag potentially with some of the things we were doing in the past. So, yeah, I think we need to go out there and sort of not even try to copy everyone because then you're still going to be behind. But
where can you innovate? I mean,
we have to innovate.
INEOS and previously Sky, like that, the advantage was you had a bigger bank account to play with, but also there was the Brailsford, you know, kind of sensibility and philosophy of approaching this like 1% better and like finding all of these edges. And that became, you know, a distinguishing factor that allowed the teams to, you know, succeed beyond expectations. But these other teams have caught up. They have bigger budgets. So you can't just rest on those laurels. Like where you have to continue that innovation process and try to find out where the next advantage is hiding.
Yeah, and I mean, you can say it is rotten luck. I mean, Egan Bernal crashing, Chris Froome of at the peak of their powers. You know, things unforeseen are also having a lingering effect because, you know, Egan, for example, was signed long term as, you know, the go-to guy. So all of a sudden you got to find, you know, we had Carlos Rodriguez last year. He was 5th in the Tour last year. He had a difficult Tour this year. He was sick a bit, but he was still competitive. I mean, he was still 7th in a very high level. But again, he's another one. There was guys that sort of snuck in between he and those top 3 that, you know, potentially are older, and he was above not long ago. So that's sort of my thing. I believe we've got the personnel. I believe, like you say, we just need to take a bit more of a look. And I mean, I'm not a scientist. I'm the sort of athlete that just loves to get told what to do, get given what they need to get given, you know, as far as nutrition and plans and whatever hydration, the equipment, however we do it, and trust that we have the best people in those roles and just go out and execute, you know. Others are very, you know, they love to research stuff themselves, you know, like the only American kid, Magnus Sheffield, you know, he's just always reading. He's always trying to learn. He's always trying to figure out what's going on and better himself and do all this stuff. You know, I've never been that. I've always just tried to surround myself with the best people and trust what they're doing. So I guess as a team, they need to figure out how to support each athlete individually and how they like to do it, and try to find a way to get ahead. You know, it's not even about catching up. You want to get ahead, but I definitely believe the team has the personnel. So, you know, they keep chipping away at it. They'll find a way and they'll fight back. I mean, it's a great organization with a huge amount of success, and there's a bunch of those people still there, even if you have lost Dave Brailsford at the helm.
There's been some chatter about Tom Pidcock's future, some articles being written about this other team, Q36.5. I've never heard of this team. And some idea that his contract goes through 2027, I think, right? But there's some sense that he might switch teams. Like, is there any insight that you have on that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I got a lot of insight on it. I mean,
insight that you're willing to share. I know, I'm sure you know a lot that maybe you're not allowed to say.
No, I mean, that idea makes sense. I mean, Tom has, I guess, the team really want to focus on winning the Grand Tours, and to this point, Tom has obviously focused on other things. You know, he's wanted to learn about the tour and learn about the Grand Tours, but obviously he's, as a champion that he is, he's just won his second Olympic gold medal. I mean, that is pretty incredible, especially when you think about the fine margin he won it by. You know, athletes that can do that like one day every 4 years, and he's done it twice. It's, you know, they're obviously that next level. Now, where it's up, I guess it's him and the timing. I mean, if he feels there's pressure from the team to do something he'd feel he's ready to do at the moment, then yeah, I mean, it makes perfect sense that if they don't want to support the way he wants to try to win races, then he's going to look for a team that does want to support that. Now, he's got a contract, so he has to negotiate that. The Q36.5 is a very logical choice because he potentially would have an opportunity to build a team around himself there, which is what, if you remember, Matthew van der Poel did, you know, and that team has now grown into quite a successful, incredibly successful team. They've won obviously everything with him, but also Philipsen and a bunch of other guys. They win a truckload of bike races and at the highest level. And also on top of that, Tom, you know, Pinarello, with them not winning the tour and things Tom's become quite a shining light for that brand with his success. So the owner of that team, or Q36.5, which is actually a clothing company, also owns Pinarello. So, you know, there's a natural desire for that owner, for example, to have Tom as his guy. And if he feels that Tom being in a team on his own where he can showcase that more, I mean, it makes sense to me on a bunch of levels. Whether the team let him go, you know, let the guy, one of the few guys that's actually capable of winning races at the moment, walk out the door. I mean, that's for management. That's a tricky decision for them to make.
It's interesting, though, because they have such a unique and flexible relationship with you and what you do, and seem to really respect that you have this whole other career outside of pro cycling. And they accommodate that, right? And bring you in when needed, but seem to respect that, you know, you have this other world that you're know, trying to excel in.
I guess it's a bit different because they see Tom as a guy that could win the tour.
Right.
They
so
probably
all that
don't rely
pressure,
on
it's different.
me. They don't rely on me winning the tour.
We're paying him a lot more.
Yeah, exactly.
We need him in yellow. All that other stuff. You know, that's got to go. It's different. I understand.
Basically, I mean, that sort of is the line there. I mean, I'm sure if I was one of the few on the team that could perform and they were in the situation they're in where not a lot of guys, you know, they're not having a lot of success or the level of success they would like to have, you know, there'd probably be more pressure. And there has been this year, to be honest. I haven't raced as many Ironmans this year, people would have noticed, more because they've called me in at different times and I've sort of, at times it was, you know, there was a time recently I wanted to do the Ironman in Frankfurt. I really wanted to race Christian. I'd had a great summer of prep. And I was about to enjoy my last week of recovery, ready for that. And the team rang and said, we need you to go to Tour of Poland next week. And I was like, well, we've got quite a big Ironman next week and it's part of the Pro Series, which I want to be a part of and blah, blah. Yeah, well, we need you in Poland. I said, well, fair enough. I don't want to be another one of the riders that doesn't want to go to a race because I don't feel like it or I got something else on. I'm on the roster. So, you know, I ended up missing that Ironman. I ended up doing that race and ended up racing again the following week at Tour of Germany. So I basically did 4 weeks of like the hardest training of my life. And it was actually fantastic. Fitness wise, it just gave me a nice big bump. And then obviously I was released, if you like, from school to come here to the US and sort of hone in on Kona. So as far as Kona went, it was actually probably a godsend. But there's certainly been times this year. I mean, even the Ironman South Africa early in the year when I qualified for Kona that week, I raced.
You did Amstel Gold, and then you did La Flèche Wallonne
on the Wednesday.
and then Ironman South Africa all in 8 days.
Yeah, all in 8 days. Then I flew that night.
Just to disabuse anybody who might be thinking you're taking your foot off the gas.
Yeah. So, but I mean, I had to do that race because I needed to qualify for Kona. I wanted to do it early.
And then you podiumed. You were third at South Africa.
I was leading until 7K to go. I just ran out of gas, which is probably understandable, you know, considering the week that I'd had. I was just a bit
not
tired.
exactly a taper.
No, it was amazing because I love that race. I love that race in South Africa because we stay in a hotel right basically on the finish line. So, you know, I finished the race. I was third, at the podium, did all that, did doping control, you know, walked across the road. Obviously, a lot of people want to stop you and have a photo, did all that, got to the hotel. My wife was already back there waiting for me with our boy. And I walked in, you know, gave my wife the flowers. She loves getting those. And, you know, I said, I'm going to have a shower. Had a shower, jumped into bed. And I remember Liège-Bastogne-Liège was on and the Formula One. So I, you know, had that on the TV and the iPad and fell asleep. Now, within probably 30 minutes, so within an hour of finishing the race, hour and a half, I was sound asleep. Now, during that run alone, I think I had around 600 milligrams of caffeine because I was tired. And so I was just pumping every gel I could into me and Coke and whatever else. And plus I'd had some on the bike. And so I'd probably had 1,000 milligrams that day. Yet as soon as I finished, I just fell asleep. Normally I don't sleep until 2 or 3 a.m. the next day. You're so lit after the race. But yeah, so I've this year I've definitely been more accommodating. Well, not more accommodating. I've fulfilled my role with the team a lot more, and I've also realised when people say, "Oh, you know, you should be able to focus." I said, "No, I'm part of the cycling team, and for that, I'm a cyclist. You know, I'm not a sideshow triathlete. I do my job properly, and set an example for the other guys as well. If I start not wanting to do this, not wanting to do that." I mean, it just sort of sets a bad example for the rest of the team. So, but yeah, I think in the end, it's left me a bit fresher for this preparation for Kona.
Are you the oldest guy in the peloton? Are there guys that are older than you?
I think there is a couple of guys that might be a little bit older, but certainly in the World Tour, yes, I'm the oldest. Yeah.
And is there anything, I mean, I'm certain like, not just on INEOS, but like all the guys come to you for wisdom. You've been around so long, like you've seen it all that kind of stuff. But then on top of that, like, is there anything at 41 that you have to pay attention to more than you had to when you were 35 or 31? Like, are you noticing, like, as you're aging up that you can't do certain things you used to be able to do? Or is it still, you're just like all gas all the time?
I have a really low tolerance for crashing now. I do not want to crash. And if I come close to a crash...
That's less about age and more about like parenthood.
It probably is. But if I see a crash or I see someone do something stupid that I mean, I don't lash out at it, but I just say to myself, I'm like, what are you? You know, whereas in the past, it's sort of just part of the racing.
And by extension, does that impact your aggressiveness on the descents?
Yeah, I'm very good at doing my job and being at the front, on the front, out of trouble, keeping my guys out of trouble. And when I'm done, like when I don't have any legs left, I'm at the back and out of trouble. I'm not sitting in the death zone, you know, and if I can come back, if I can recover back there and come back and help again, absolutely. But yeah, there's definitely, I have a bit of a different approach, but as far as that goes, but also I'm no good to anyone if I'm on the ground, you know? So, and also, yeah, I definitely have less tolerance to that just aggressiveness that goes on unnecessarily. I mean, I'll fight all day for a crosswind section or the first section of the cobbles in Roubaix or whatever, you know, when it's a part of the event. But just, I mean, nowadays it's just can be nervous all day. You know, I mean, the road can just be blocked all day. So, you know, you got two choices. You're either at the front and out of trouble, or you're at the back and out of trouble, and you let the middle of the peloton.
How did you feel about the
out.
introduction of gravel to the Tour de France? Is that controversial in the peloton? It made for good viewing, but yeah. I don't know if that's sticking around.
Guys don't like, I mean, you know, you can slip out, slide out, and it can ruin months, years. I mean, I'm a big proponent of there's a lot of investment in these guys, and for something unnecessarily taking them out, you know, it's sad, you know, especially, I mean, even rain or whatever, you know, like a guy crashes your leader and he's out of the tour. I mean, a guy you pay millions of dollars and invested even more in and the whole preparation, and all of a sudden the team feels like it's I mean, but I guess that's also part of the sport. But to add anything else in that potentially you don't need to, does it add to the spectacle? You know, I don't really, I mean, it's exciting. I remember wanting to watch the stage, knowing that it was going to be something was going to happen. It's the same with the cobbles. But we're also seeing that those stages are being more neutralized because all the guys are more prepared for it. So I think if you want to see more explosive, exciting racing, you're probably better off doing that on a traditional course. You know, you just throw in some more climbs or a more technical aspect on a normal road course. And then that at least there's more chance of the legs deciding than maybe luck. Yeah.
Well, they did a little bit of that this year. I mean, the Tour just kicked off and just went right into the mountain straight away, where usually there's several days of sprint stages before you get to that. Yeah.
See, I think that's wonderful. But I think if you were going to lose a favorite or lose people because of gravel, I think that's, I don't think that people don't tune in to watch clouds of dust. I don't think, you know, I mean, it doesn't appeal to as many people.
It was kind of exciting though.
Yeah.
But maybe part of that excitement was just novelty.
Oh, absolutely. I don't doubt that part. But yeah, from a rider's perspective. Yeah. I mean, it's definitely an added element of, and especially with how nervous, as I said, the peloton and everything is nowadays, it's, it just makes for a really, really tough day. And then in the end, nothing really changed.
Why did we do that?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that would be more my point.
Yeah,
you know?
I get it.
Maybe if you're going to do it, how about we do like a 20% gravel climb? You know, like what that is just going to decimate the field, and then it kind of makes sense.
So let's talk about Kona coming up in 2 weeks. We were talking earlier about the former era. You could win the race or really distinguish yourself by being really strong in one discipline. Norman Stadler on the bike, those types of athletes, that's no longer the case. You really have to be great at all three. Yeah. That's just the progress that this sport has made. We've got the Norwegians, Christian and Gustav. Yeah. We've got, of course, Sam Laidlow, who broke the bike course record the other year. We've got Patrick Longa. How is this shaping up in your mind? Like, how are you thinking about the competition and your specific approach to the race?
Yeah, like you say, you've got to be good at everything now. And that's a great thing. I mean, that's how it should be. It's a professional sport and you should have to be very good at the craft. And I think it's just going to be a natural sort of demolition of the field because it's going to be on from the start. So, you know, you're going to have guys eliminated very early as the swim.
The trope has always been like, you can't win the race in the swim, but you can lose it.
You can definitely.
But do you think we're now in an era in which perhaps the swim is much more important than it ever has been?
Absolutely. Yeah. And the momentum at the front of the race, you know, the dynamic of what ends up at the front after the swim will have a big impact on how the race plays out. So, yeah,
which is why you on Instagram yesterday shared some clips of you swimming and asked
for feedback.
Some cheeky feedback.
It's funny because one of the most common comments was you got to finish off a bit more. So this morning I actually had open water practice with Tower 26, and the wonderful thing about swimming with Tower 26 and those beach swims is the same people show up every week, and there's some very strong open water swimmers there. And when I rocked up 6 weeks ago, I got dropped straight away. I mean, I'd been racing on the bike. I'd been sort of training on my own for a few weeks. Like Hayden Wild had been at the Olympics, and when he went off and did that, then he had a break. So we hadn't really trained together for really a couple of months. So I'd lost that competitiveness in the swim that I exposed to. Anyway, so all of a sudden, the second week, right, okay, get up earlier, have your coffee, have some gels, like make sure you got fuel on board. And I was then able to stay in the group. Then the next week you start drawing alongside. Then the next week you're like eyeballing the top guys. Then you're actually starting to race them. I mean, it's been great for me to have a benchmark to like see my improvement. But the feedback about finishing off the stroke was great because this morning I was actually able to sort of, okay, I'm just going to work on that one thing. And I got to say, I really appreciate the people that gave me that feedback.
Yeah. Part of it was tongue in cheek though, because obviously you're not going to like overhaul your stroke, mechanics 2 weeks out.
And I know I'm swimming well.
It was sort of a joke, but then I had some thoughts, but then I was like, he's fine.
What if he reads it? Yeah.
But the best were like, here's my feedback, like you should quit swimming, or just like, very kind of like Aussie sort of comments.
I always, when I put swimming up, I always get some great stuff. But I also know that it's the one thing that people can really have a dig at me, and I give people such a hard time, often, or people
their running
perceive,
form or
anything, not wearing t-shirts, whatever it is. Lionel and it was best yesterday, his double threshold day. I was like, Lionel, that's so 2022. I mean, we haven't spoken about double threshold since 2022. And people are always into me about it being nasty or whatever. So, make a bit of fun of myself. But I think it's
following through on your stroke. That's some solid one-on-one, swimming one-on-one feedback.
Exactly. And I've still got 2.5 weeks, so I can make improvements. So people, please, feedback.
A little more shoulder roll. You're a little flat on the surface there. And your right arm comes across like very, very kind of horizontally, right? So flat like that.
Yeah.
Whereas if you can just get that higher elbow, you can get more of a shoulder roll and a deeper pull. And also, you're using your legs too much. A lot of people said that. Like no reason. And in a wetsuit, just drag your legs, man.
Yeah,
There's no reason for you to be kicking like that. The only purpose of kicking it's not propulsion, it's body position, right? To keep your body high.
Yeah, I normally don't. I was actually doing a bit of faster stuff. I didn't want to put my slow swimming up there. I wanted to try and, so that was
you don't want to be that vulnerable.
Yeah. No, but yeah, I like that shoulder. That's a great one too. These are little things I've still got time to work on.
Yeah.
And
one of the things that Lionel has been doing that I wanted to get your feedback on that I thought was interesting. We talk about zone training, zone 2, like threshold, all that sort of stuff. But he doesn't really talk about zones at all. He's always talking about LT1 and LT2. So LT1 being when your body first begins to accumulate lactate. But not to the degree that you can't be always like purging it. So it's sort of maybe you're into the higher zone 2 kind of range. And then LT2, which is when you lose your ability to clear that lactate and you're more in that kind of like threshold pace. Do you think in those terms, or and he's always pricking his ear and taking lactate and all of that? Like what's your
So there's two things with the science. I mean, if you know what you're doing, like the Norwegians, you do it. I mean, if you don't know
they're
what
all in
fully. Exactly.
Yeah.
I think we spoke about it last time. Like I spoke to Alexander about that, and it's like if you don't know what, you're better off doing nothing. So I hope in Lionel's case he knows what he's doing. But the funny thing about LT1 and LT2, I did laugh when I started to hear that term reemerge. That was exactly,
that's old school. That
was our rowing.
Yeah,
that was our rowing efforts. Like I've been doing that since I was 15. It was LT1 effort, LT2, and so I know exactly what that zone, but I mean, I guess in today's terms, it's simply, as you say, zone 3, to threshold, which is that just after zone 2 phase, but still comfortable. And then, or you go VO2, which is past threshold, where, as you say, it's like a minute or a couple of minutes sort of max. And then you got to really figure out how to clear that because you're just getting more and more into the hole. So, it's funny. I hadn't heard those terms for 20 years.
Yeah. It was interesting when I started hearing that. I was like, yeah, that is way back. Right. But now I guess the difference being like, he's pricking his ear and he's getting blood. And so he's testing his lactate all the time, which is, that's the kind of improvement on what used to be just something you would go on feel for.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to take it a step in Italian, I had an Italian coach, Aldo Sassi, quite a legend. He's now since passed, but he had the MAPE team. He was the one that started that and managed that. But he used to call it Lungo, which was zone 2, Medio, which is medium, Solia, which is threshold, and Sopra Solia, which was above
I kind of like that. I think you should just only use those terms going forward
from now on, just to confuse
and everyone will think you've invented some new training.
But it's basically, I don't think you change those.
But
because as you said,
strike
they're a sensation.
You're kind of, you've been doing this so long. You don't like, yes, I'm sure you have a power meter and heart rate, all that kind of stuff, but you know where you're at, right? Yeah. Like, and you know what you need. And so you don't strike me as somebody who's like digging into the weeds of, all the data points.
No, not at all. I mean, I just sort of know how fast I need. I mean, Dave Zabriskie gave me some of the greatest advice, which was forget about what the power meter says and, just figure out how to go fast.
Mm-hmm.
And Bradley McGee was another one that gave me the same advice. Two of the greatest sort of prologue time trialists of.
I think does Dave still have the time trial record, fastest time trial?
He does. Yeah, no, he does. So, and he's out here, he's got his boys now. Yeah, and his boys
they're
are
all like, now they're gung-ho cyclists.
They're homeschooled and they're cycling flat out. And I mean, the team even asked me to make sure I spoke to Dave while I was out, find out if any other teams have been speaking to them. I mean, okay, one of his boys is actually...
Dave is sort of like, what have I reaped? You know, like I think he got his kids into cycling for fun. And now like they're sort of, taking his path, and he's like, uh-oh.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, as you said, I can't wait for them to go to a team because I've had to build a team. I did not want to build a team. I mean, I've got bikes and wheels and driving them here and there and traveling everywhere with them. You can't wait for them to go to the next level.
Right.
So,
get it out of my hands.
Yeah, but so, and he even shared yesterday, as I said to you before, just like getting a bit of heat exposure now going into Kona. I mean, over in Santa Monica where we are, it's a lot cooler than out here. So yesterday, instead of doing my TT efforts, I've been doing up around the strawberry fields and been quite pleasant. But Dave used to use from Malibu Canyon on Mulholland past your place, up 7-minute hill, and then you just get to the top of 7 minutes and then roll back down,
loop it around,
loop it around, just do that. So I did that a few times yesterday, and I know how quick I need to be going at the perceived effort, and it was hot as hell, I mean, I more look at, I'll sort of pick a point to point, I know that, if 90 minutes I can go from Zuma back to the top of the hill at the gas station after Zuma, I know I'm going pretty well, So what the power meter says or the heart rate monitor or whatever is kind of irrelevant.
And then during the race, trying to tune that out completely and just race.
And now we're racing. I mean, that's the thing. When we're in the race, it's like you got to do what you got to do to get to where you need to be to give yourself a chance to try and win this thing. And especially when it comes to Kona, especially as disappointed as I was to have a disappointing Kona, I was still 11th, last time around. But it was a backward step from fifth.
And how many guys broke the bike course record that you were
just
under?
one.
And it was your record.
Oh yeah,
right?
I think Sam obviously broke it. I was also under it. I think
you were under it.
Yeah, and there was maybe
second
one
off? Were you second off the bike?
I wasn't second off the bike, but I was second quickest.
Time
I think
split,
I was fourth.
Bike split.
Yeah, I was just behind the Norwegians. So they had that group of three. So I was fifth off the bike. I just about caught them, but. Yeah, basically, Kona's that race, and it also makes you realise that, I've been fifth, I've been 9th, I've been 11th, I've been 17th. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter now what I've got to just try and finish as high as I possibly can. It's not about having a good performance there. It's about trying to win the thing. It's all or nothing.
I mean, you still got your eyes on the prize, right?
Yeah.
Still possible.
Yeah.
So predictions for the race, like where do you see yourself? How are you going to execute on this? Who are the other people that you're thinking about and where they're going to kind of fall in that pecking order?
Yeah, I mean, obviously at my age, everyone kind of assumes, you
could be a sleeper. Yeah, you can
41.
kind of sneak up on.
But I think back to when I first went to the Olympics and someone said, and I'll explain, but if you reach the top of any elite sport and you make it to that and you're a chance of competing, you're doing the biggest event in that sport. In our case, that's Kona as a professional. I've never been on that start line and someone's gone out on those surfboards and asked for our birth certificate. No one cares how old you are. If you've earned the right to be there and you are there, you've got a chance of, trying to win that thing. It's irrelevant. It doesn't matter if you're young or old. Yeah, I don't even think about that part. I'm only thinking about figuring out how to beat these guys, and to do that, I know I have to swim very well. I need to be close to the front of the race if I'm not at the front of the race. I need to get to the front of the race, and I need to ensure that the race is very hard so that if anyone else is there, the run is
You're forcing a bike pace that is getting your competitors out of their comfort zone more than you.
Precisely. Yeah. And it was actually really good because I did a last-minute Ironman in the summer in Vitoria-Gasteiz, which was, I was meant to be actually racing the bike that week, and then they said, oh, no, you don't have to come. I was like, oh, great, I'll go and do the Ironman then. This is like the Thursday, and the race is on the Sunday. And Sam was there, Laidlow. And they actually... I actually didn't swim very well. I had I just sort of got through the bike and thought I'll just do a good run. I was actually planning to go to Lake Placid the weekend after. I was sort of doing it more as a training session and figured I was out of the race. But I ended up third, and the group that I came off the bike with ended up first and second. So we were the podium, and we ran all of the front. There was a front group of about 4 or 5 up the road that had ridden very, very hard. And Sam was the only one that stayed just in front of me, but he'd been disqualified because he didn't take a drafting penalty. So I was 4th over the line, but ended up 3rd. But it reminded me that, wait a minute, like if these guys try to ride that hard, they actually really damage their run. So as a hard bike into a run goes, I really believe that I can be there.
Yeah.
And so obviously that's my strategy, to somehow make the bike hard. So if people are there, they've got a bit of the edge off them, and that makes it a bit more of a scrappier, grind out run. Or they're going to have to sit up and burn a lot of time and bank on guys blowing up.
Yeah. You have, with age, also more experience at this race than anyone else, but also you have done more work over the years than anybody else. Like you have this insane work capacity in a sport that is about work capacity, and you just love it. If it was up to you, I'm sure you would train all day, every single day of your life. And,
absolutely. And
you have this thing, which is you basically never get tired, right? And I heard I had like Ken Rideout on here and Jesse Itzler, and I don't know who invented it, but one of them like deploy this tactic when they're in a race, and they just look at the guy who's they're neck and neck with, and they're like, you know what? You know the thing about me?
Yeah.
Like, what? I just never get tired. It's crazy. But you could actually say that, and you are that guy. Like you don't get tired.
Yeah, so. I don't. I love, like I said to you the other day, I had a great sort of adventure day, but it ends up being a pretty crazy day of training.
Yeah, so just to explain people what you did.
Yeah, so I had the morning, the squad swim, which was an hour, and that's like the hardest squad swim
at
of the
Tower
week.
26 at the
Tower
Palisades
26
pool.
at Palisades, they go flat out on Saturdays because everyone's off work, and they've had a bit more of a sleep in. We don't swim till 7:30, so everyone's a bit more jazzed up. So, and everyone wants to, is there to smash me basically. I mean, Jerry and his guys are amazing. They just really commit to like helping me prepare the best that they possibly can. I really appreciate that. And then, I did my bike ride up to the strawberry fields, but, instead of going back to Santa Monica and doing a run, I said to my wife, could you meet me out here in Calabasas, and I'll give you my bike, and then I'm going to run up Dirt Mulholland because it was so hot out here. I wanted to get some heat.
Did you start at Peddler's Fork, or did you?
No, I started in
right
Santa Monica.
But no, for the run part.
Oh, for the run, I started at Peddler's Fork.
Right, and so you took Valley Circle to the beginning of Dirt Mulholland.
I actually added a bit. I ran around past the Commons and then up that way, and then along Mulholland, and I actually grabbed a last minute Coke at the gas station there on Mulholland. Just to really load up, because I felt how hot it was when I started running.
And it's I think it's from the beginning of the dirt on Dirt Mulholland to the Nike Missile Tower is like 6.5 or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, it ended up being 19 kilometers, so nearly 12 miles to there.
From Peddlers.
From Peddlers,
right.
Yeah, by the time I'd done the extra bit. And then
there's that one water fountain.
And then there's the one water fountain at the top.
You took a photo of that. I know exactly what that water fountain is.
And I was listening to your podcast. You were talking about LMNT, and I'd taken an LMNT with me because I don't know why I did, but as you saw, I had a gel, I had a Morton gel, an LMNT. I didn't even have a bottle, but I ended up having a bit of the gel, pouring the LMNT into the gel packet, and then putting a bit of water out of the fountain, mixing it all around, scoffing it down. So I got some sodium in, got some sugar in,
and
had a good drink.
It was like 100 degrees out that day.
It was 100.
And Dirt Mulholland is like hotter than
a furnace.
It's super hot up there.
It was a light tail breeze as well, so it just couldn't. Anyway, yeah, and then obviously I ran down West Ridge into Santa Monica. It was like 34, so it was 21, 22 miles in the end. But it dropped about 40 degrees. I mean, I almost got hypothermia when I got to the bottom. But, and it's like at the end of the day, you've done, 7, that was a 2 hour, 20 run, 4 hours on the bike, 7.5 hour day, more or less. And I just love it. I mean, it was just such an interesting day for me, yet as far as an athletic side, it was like a really high level, the bike was a really hard bike, a really Ironman specific type session with some good consistent hard power and the run, I pushed the pace all the way up to Nike, knowing that it's all downhill from there. Isn't that the worst? You think, it's all downhill, but you realize you're actually running. It's not like on a bike. Like you can kind of let your legs go, but it actually hurts even more when they're tired going downhill. But that's also something that we've actually done a bit of this year, more of, which is designed to, and that was the other idea behind the run, because a few weeks before I'd actually run from Santa Monica up to West Ridge and just back down. And I said to Brett at Nike, I said, look, I've got an idea of a different route, and it sort of puts the downhill at the same point, but a bit more of an interesting way to get up there. So that was the reason why.
And the downhill portion down West Ridge is much steeper than the ascent up to Mulholland.
It's half. It's almost half.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you've got the concrete part, the last part. So it was, that was a great day.
Good one, man.
But no, I love it. I honestly love it.
What is your sense of what's happening with the Norwegians? So as we all know, there was this commitment after the prior Ironman season that they were going all in on the Olympics.
Yeah.
They were going to step it down to shorter distances. Christian did not have, Gustav had some other issues and did not compete, and Gustav had a subpar performance in the Olympics. Now he's back to Kona. Mm-hmm. Difficult transition. He had like a big win at an Ironman in between, where he showed like, hey man, I'm just as good as I ever was.
Yeah.
What do you think happened at the Olympics, and where do you think like he's at right now in his Kona prep?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, he hasn't really been at that level since Tokyo. He hasn't dominated really anything since then, as far as an Olympic level. And I train with Hayden all the time in that period. I mean, he and Alex Yee have been a long way ahead of him, that whole period. So it wasn't a surprise. I mean, that was about where everyone expected him to finish. So whether he's lost some speed, I guess that's it. I mean, he was with them off the bike. He was in a position to win off the bike. He just didn't have the legs. So you can just assume that time has meant that he's lost speed. I mean, Alex and Hayden are younger, and maybe that, and they're running quick, like 29 minutes in that kind of heat. It's pretty remarkable. So you'd think that also that with his age, the Ironman would actually suit him better. So potentially, from where he might be very disappointed of how that panned out, he could actually be primed for an even better performance in Ironman, which is quite scary.
And bringing that period of time in which he was so speed focused, maybe not fast enough to, to distinguish himself in the Olympics, but bringing that back into the Kona context could be like a powerful weapon.
Yeah, it's certainly not something that I'm excited for him to have, and that's why I guess the only vulnerability and this is the bike. If we can somehow make him work harder than he wants to work. I mean, they're very calculated with how they do things. Can we deaden his run? I mean, and that's the only option. Or is he going to do his own thing and bank on running everyone down? And Gustav,
you just don't know.
You don't know. We don't really know. But there's again a bit like we talked about Kipchoge, guys that are that good. Same with Gustav, you cannot rule them out. I mean, I think Sam Laidlow's a clear favourite. There's Magnus Ditlev, the big Danish guy, Great Dane we call him. I mean, he's had some phenomenal, consistent performance over the past few years, and he'll be a factor. But yeah, I mean, it's Kona. There's just something about that race that you never know who it's going to destroy, and you never know who it's going to put up on the pedestal and turn into a king. So that's what's exciting about it.
if Australian energy has anything to do with your success, you're in good company, because right now the Aussies are setting the pace in terms of what's happening at the outer edges of endurance.
Yeah.
So I want to spend a few minutes talking about kind of what's happening right now.
Yeah.
We have Lachlan Morton, who just broke by like 7 days, I think.
That's a lot.
The record for cycling the perimeter of Australia. Insanity. He did it in 30 days, riding some, insane number of kilometers every single day and getting like 7 hours of sleep every night. Rewriting that record, which is unbelievable. And right now we have Ned Brockman approximately like halfway through his attempt to break the 1,000-mile record on the track in Centennial Park. And the videos that are on Instagram right now, like showing the brutal reality of what he's decided to shoulder for himself, are pretty insane.
Yeah, I mean, I just should say, like we talked a bit briefly before about the endurance world and the post-COVID era of hype, the level, how it's gone. I mean, really in that world as well, these guys are, it's mind-boggling. They are world class. I mean, I guess in the past, sometimes it was like, it might be like some 56-year-old guy that runs across America or something, and it's like, wow, that's like an incredible achievement or whatever. But these guys are now like touching on like the high performance part of these extreme challenges, which I think blows my mind. I mean, we get to Lachlan, but Ned at the moment, I mean, you think about, 1,000 miles. Okay, wow, that's a lot. 10 days. Okay, yeah, that's a lot. Oh, wow, that's like 4 marathons in a day.
Right. 100 miles every day.
Every single day, and he's on track. I mean, he just passed halfway. He's on track for it. But, I mean, that is just, a marathon a day is enough to be very hard to, people have done that in every state or whatever. But four of them, but not just one day, 4 of them. Like it literally just actually blows your mind. And obviously then the same with Lachlan, it was almost 300 miles a day, 250 miles a day. And I don't know, people are used to riding around here, in beautiful hot mix and super fast roads. Man, you go to Australia and those roads are like, they're dead as Elvis. They are like just slow grind, like just like chip seal, like it's hard to ride on them, So we always say, like the Aussies, when they go back to Europe at the start of the year, they're always flying because they've been at home training on these roads that are just dead and hard, and their legs toughen up. And then as the year goes on, the Aussies' performances tend to fall because the legs soften up a little bit, racing around on the fast roads of Europe. So, what Lachlan did, 30 days
14,200 kilometers, which is 8,823 miles in 30 days. 450 kilometers a day on average. Yeah. Getting 7 hours of sleep a night.
That's the thing, the sleep part. Like it was literally that's a training camp for him.
Yeah.
What
is it? You know this guy, right?
Yeah. I was in touch with him during, he sent me a wonderful selfie at one point. It was actually it was a Wednesday. I won't forget because I just finished swimming and I was about to do the similar run to what I'll do this afternoon. And I was like, it's just a tough one to get up for. It's a hard session. You're a bit tired from the swim. And I just messaged him to say, mate, listen, like, I just want you to know that when I'm trying to get out the door for the 3rd session of the day or the 4th session or, whatever, I often think of you and it just sort of reminds me to just show up and go and do it. A bit Ken Rideout style like that. And literally, he must have just stopped for the day or something because he sent me a picture of himself, like a smile, back later on. It's just, it's just like, it's very motivating. It's people like he and people like Ned that, remind you when you do need to do a session and you're not really keen to start it. It's just like, just get rolling. And they're not trying to say that they're doing the fastest. They're setting world records, of course, but they're not trying to proclaim that they're faster than Pogacar, or if Lachlan, well, in Lachlan's case, he probably could have won the Tour, if he'd chosen that path. He was a phenomenal still is, but a junior talent, the sky seemed to be the limit. And for whatever reason,
chose a different path. I mean, for people that don't know, Lachlan Morton, world team rider for EF, was in the mix and in the peloton and had a certain career trajectory and kind of pulled a Laird Hamilton. It's like, I could do this, but like actually my passion in cycling is something else altogether that I want to paint a different type of canvas and I want to do it my way. And stepped out, first distinguished himself by doing this thing called the Alt Tour, where he rode the whole Tour de France by himself, unassisted, and his feet got all chewed up so much that he created this sort of like Birkenstock type shoe that he was riding with and sleeping on the side of the road. And he ended up getting like more engagement for that than like the EF team did for their performance in the Tour de France, which kind of validated like this idea that, you can carve your own path as an athlete. That began with guys like Laird, and now there's more kind of like established roots to doing this, and has just continued while also distinguishing himself in gravel. Like he won Unbound right now. Like he's just an absolute beast, and then he takes on these insane challenges. And like really like the whole world like rallies around him. Like he could be like one of the most popular cyclist in the world. Like people love him.
For sure. He's mainstream. I mean, he's one of the few cyclists that's written about in mainstream media or covered in mainstream media. I mean, it's phenomenal. And like you said, there's been that evolution of him kind of discovering that world and doing these things to all of a sudden now we're seeing a real high performance level of doing these things. Like you said, he won Unbound. He tried to win Leadville. He had some mechanical problems, but it was still right up there. I mean, he's got some races coming up here at the end of the year. I mean, this was like a big training camp for him, for doing those events. I mean, it's he's a really class act, and like I say to people, if you're ever struggling for motivation to do anything, just have a read of what he's up to, because he'll be doing something that'll a bit like Ned. I mean, let's see how he goes his next few days. He's on track now, but I mean that what he's trying to do, that really blows my mind.
I mean, it's wild. It's wild.
Yeah,
and it appears we're on like day 5, I think, right now when we're recording this. He's starting you could see the cracks. He's struggling, but his mental game is so powerful. My only concern is because he's getting so little sleep, does he have somebody on his team to really keep him out of real mortal danger? Because he's one of those guys who will just go until like he drops and he's in an ambulance.
That's I got faith in him.
I do too.
Smash some of his milk.
I'm not betting against that guy, and I just love his enthusiasm and just the way that he can like unite all of these people, and he gets all these people who don't necessarily have any connection to the endurance world, excited about what he's doing. And he's raising all this money for homelessness, just like Lachlan raised a ton of money for indigenous literacy. So I think these things are really cool. And so I have an idea for you, Cam. Speaking of bringing high performance to, the sort of granola crunchy world of some of these ultra endurance races, I think we need to see you toe the line at Ultraman, because you would just absolutely rewrite the record book on that race.
Well, potentially, that's another one the guys are doing the levels race.
It's starting to, but we still have yet to see, like on the women's side, there's been like some, women pros who have gone in and like done incredibly well and rewrote the record book there. But I don't think we've seen a true star standout male.
Compete. I've definitely looked at it, and obviously next year presents an opportunity because there is no Kona. I mean, that's the other thing with Kona now. That's why this year is there's so much more riding on it. We only get to do it once every 2 years. They split the World Championships now, but the reality is, I mean, the World Championship is still a huge thing to try to succeed, but all of us want to win in Kona. I mean, that's the event that, that's what an Ironman triathlete wants to do and wants to do well at.
But you could just stick around, in Hawaii for another month and then just do Ultraman.
I guess the problem would be, this time I haven't qualified. I didn't plan it properly, but certainly in the next couple of years, it's 100% is because I feel like my background from stage racing on a bike and obviously my triathlon background, in theory, it should be something that suits me quite well because of you, as people, 100%. The listeners, you do the swim the first day and a bit of the bike, and then you do a big bike ride the second day, and then you do the double marathon.
It's a cycling race predominantly. It favors cycling for sure.
You know more than me. You've done it. So so I think it is something I'd love to do.
I'll come and crew you.
That'd be awesome. Yeah, have some experience there.
Unbelievable. One of the things that I think is this is kind of shifting gears a little bit, that I've noticed about you, I think is really smart, is you recognize this privileged situation that you find yourself in, where you are elite in a sport that a lot of kind of, amateurs like to participate in. And in many ways, cycling is sort of like golf now in terms of like business development and stuff like that. And you get invited to ride in all these Grand Fondos and participate in fundraising rides like Best Buddies and stuff like that. And that puts you in the environment of all these sort of successful businessmen and entrepreneurs. Yeah. And I think you're really smart in the way that you leverage. Sounds like too opportunistic a word, but like you're aware, like, oh, this is a privileged situation that I get to hang out with all these people, and you're not squandering it. You're like, I'm getting to know all these guys. Like, you're not somebody who, when the sun finally sets and you decide like you don't want to be a professional athlete any longer, like you have all these people. Like I would imagine you'll find your way into a different career path like quite easily because of these relationships that you've developed over many years. Yeah, the CEO of our cycling team, John Allett, he actually suggested I read a book called The Tipping Point recently. Malcolm Gladwell about the connector, and it is a fascinating read, and it's funny reading that. You start to really see how you sort of touch on a lot of different. Sport has allowed me, and it's opened so many doors to meeting a bunch of great people. And then how do you piece all those things together, which I often do, with introductions and different things that are going on. I mean, as I say, with Best Buddies, able to connect bit dots here to help with that and boost that, and a range of different things. So 100% I was asked recently about, what I want to do next. And there's two sides to it. One is you got to support your family, but obviously I want to give back in some way. And I feel like, some sort of, I guess, venture capital, private equity is a way to look at doing that, because you're kind of helping businesses grow. You can have a philanthropic, angle to that perhaps. And you can sort of give other people an opportunity to succeed. Like I've been given so many opportunities to do what I can do. Sponsors stick by you, people stick by you, friends stick by you, people, encourage you to do stuff. It would be great to offer that role back. And I realized that competing at this level is the best way to continue to have those relationships, because you develop a rapport and a respect and trust with other people that are very successful. And in that case, it's like successful people in the business world. But in reality, you're both trying to compete. You're both trying to do the same thing. And so the level of people that you're exposed to is similar to the level that you're operating at, which obviously in turn means they're very, very good at what they do. And it's a huge opportunity for me to meet these people, and I really do cherish those relationships. So I'm really excited about the next phase. That's for sure. I really, however that looks, I still don't know 100%, but there's just the one thing that's certain is all those incredible people. I know we spoke, Willie Walker, common friend of ours, you're in India with, but people like that, being able to do something where I can connect with all these people, I guess, is my ultimate goal, and how that works, so that I'm able to that network that I've developed, and I'm sure will continue to develop, which I believe could be a very, very powerful network, and just do something really meaningful in the future. It like belies or like puts the lie to the idea that like, oh, you're a professional athlete, like you're just in this like extended adolescence, know, and like when are you going to grow up and be? But it's like, no, like you're around all of these amazing people who are excelling in all these interesting and different ways as entrepreneurs and business people, and they motivate the hell out of me, and they love hanging out with you. You know what I mean? But it motivates me. You see their success, and I guess a lot of that's like a monetary success. And
you're just motivated by that. You think, wow, that's cool. You want to succeed. You realize that, success can bring you a lot of great things. You can give back. You can have a great life yourself. I mean, that's what's wonderful about all these people, that environment that I meet them in. Often it is through Best Buddies, for example, a charitable, charity organization. And that's super inspiring. So yeah, I feel really grateful.
Do you think that you're a guy who a day will come where INEOS says, we're not going to renew your contract, or what, maybe you're 60 at this point. I don't know. But at some point, probably, a reality. Are you somebody who you think like, okay, that chapter of my life is done and I'm going all in this other area? Or are you going to be the guy who, I'm not competing for money necessarily, but I'm going to go do Ultraman, or maybe I'm going to ride Unbound, or you'll continue to do these things as long as you are passionate about them.
I love this Ironman. I do love it. I love everything about the experience of going to a race. My son now, he can't wait to go to Kona and do Iron Kids. That whole, I think that I could certainly see myself enjoying going and doing an Ironman and having a bit of a trip to somewhere where we haven't been or whatever else, keeping active. But I won't chase competitiveness, I don't think. I would have spent such a massive part of my life by the time that time comes, as you say. We've sort of this 45 or 2028 line seems to be a pretty good line in the sand. What happens over the next few years? Is there like a phase out? Do I slowly phase more, out of the cycling team, but get more involved in business in that time while still competing, trying to compete at the highest level? That's something that's potentially quite exciting. I think once I'm done at that level, I'll be pretty content with the competitiveness that I've had over the years. I don't think I'll be chasing too many competitions.
Just doing it for the love.
Yeah, I'm sure. My son plays tennis, he plays golf. I'll be really happy actually playing those things as well with him at that point, as opposed to riding my bike everywhere. But I love exercising and I love being active. So one thing's for sure, I'll be doing something. But I think I'll be pretty happy. I think I'll always be a competitor, but I might just probably choose to be competitive in another discipline. I would imagine.
Yeah, you're not, just because you hang
just
out.
Not sport.
Yeah, the competitive nature doesn't suddenly dissolve.
No, I never will. I read a great even quote by Musk recently: if you want to get old quickly, stop learning. It's so true. It's you come here to America and you see people that are older just still pushing and pushing and pushing, and they look young and vibrant and they're out energy. And you're like, where do they get it? Because they're hungry. They're still wanting to succeed. The moment is you can stop, and you'll stop quickly, especially as you get older. The stop will happen even faster.
Yeah.
I won't be losing that edge.
You're the people's champion. We're all pulling for you, buddy.
I appreciate that.
Yeah,
I feel that.
Well, you got to run. You got to get to. So I'm gonna let you go. But any kind of parting final words for those that are going to be tuning in to see you race in Kona?
Just admire the level of the sport. Yeah, and just admire the sport, and maybe it'll tug your heartstring. You might want to do one yourself. It's a great sport. I love it. It's really given me everything I have today, and I love doing it with my family. And it's a very unique sport where we're all out there together. This one just happens to be at the absolute highest level, but it's all relative for everyone on that day. We're all going through the exact same thing, from the first to last finisher. So, I can just encourage people, if they are thinking about it, watch the sport, and might inspire them to do one themselves.
Awesome, man. Thanks for coming and sharing with us today, especially last minute, spontaneously like this.
Pleasure.
I don't know how much more time you're going to be spending in the area in the future, but it would be fun to have you back on just to talk about general endurance stuff. It was fun to talk about Lachlan and Ned.
Yep.
So, massive kudos to Lachlan. And nothing but crazy respect for Ned. Ned, who's in the middle of it right now. Everybody's got to tune into this. Go on Instagram, find his account, Ned with 2 Ds. give him a shout because he's in the hurt locker right now.
When you're watching me race and you think, wow, what they're doing is crazy, think about the fact that Lachlan did 3 times as far on the bike every day for 30 days and Ned ran 4 of those marathons. We ain't doing. We
it's
really
so
ain't
hard.
doing
His whole
much
body's
at all.
all taped up right now,
Oh,
including like
unreal.
he's having shoulder problems just from running. Like
Yeah.
this is how incredibly difficult this thing is that he's trying to do.
That one is really mind-boggling. Especially, at least Lachlan can kind of coast every now and then and roll a bit. Not that that dwindles that at all. But for Ned, if he doesn't put one foot in front of the other, he doesn't go anywhere.
Brutal.
Unreal.
All right, buddy. Well, best of luck.
Yep.
I'll be cheering for you. And again, thanks for coming and doing this, dude. Cheers.
Appreciate it.
Peace. That's it for today. Thank you for listening. I truly hope you enjoyed the conversation. To learn more about today's guest, including links and resources related to everything discussed today, visit the episode page at richroll.com, where you can find the entire podcast archive, my books, Finding Ultra, Voicing Change in the Plant Power Way, as well as the Plant Power Meal Planner at meals.richroll.com. If you'd like to support the podcast, the easiest and most impactful thing you can do is to subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, and on YouTube, and leave a review and or comment. This show just wouldn't be possible without the help of our amazing sponsors who keep this podcast running wild and free. To check out all their amazing offers, head to richroll.com/sponsors. And sharing the show or your favorite episode with friends or on social media is, of course, awesome and very helpful. And finally, for podcast updates, special offers on books, the meal planner, and other subjects, please subscribe to our newsletter, which you can find on the footer of any page at richroll.com. Today's show was produced and engineered by Jason Camiolo. The video edition of the podcast was created by Blake Curtis with assistance by our creative director, Dan Drake. Portraits by Davey Greenberg, graphic and social media assets courtesy of Daniel Solis. And thank you, Georgia Whaley, for copywriting and website management. And of course, our theme music was created by Tyler Pyatt, Trapper Pyatt, and Harry Mathis. Appreciate the love the support. See you back here soon. Peace. Plants. Namaste.